Action is the foundational key to all success. Pablo Picasso. Hey everybody, this is Chuck reminding you that diligence is the mother of good luck. Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to share with you a do-it-yourself urban farm project that anyone can do. We are going to build a DIY elevated garden bed like one of the ones behind me. I went out yesterday and I picked everything up from Lowe's, all the lumber and everything we needed, so we should be good to go. Down in the description below you will find the raised garden bed material list for your own use there. So, alright, let's get started. Okay, so the first thing you're going to need off your raised garden bed material list is a 55-gallon food grade drum, plastic. You can, these are super common. There's a lot of people sell them on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist. You can also buy them from Rural King and some other places like that, but they're pretty common and you can usually get them for $5 to $10. But first thing you're going to want to do is just cut it straight down the middle. There's a seam that goes along the top and the sides. I use a Sawzall. Some people like to use a circular saw, but you know, whatever gets the job done. So yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and cut this in half. Hold it. It's not metal. Just hold it. Sawzall is a little wild. It kind of is hard to keep it straight sometimes. Just bring it back this way. Lay it back down. So we can just keep going here. Yeah, so this drum had agave syrup in it. So you can find it with all sorts of things. So far we've had distilled vinegar, sesame seed oil, and agave syrup. The vinegar ones are nasty. I would recommend not using those. Huh? So if you get some of these used food grade barrels, you're gonna have to clean them out. So that's the next thing we're gonna do is with the syrup. If you just put a little bit of hot water in there, a couple drops of dish soap with a brush, it will come right out. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. so now that we got the barrels cut, we can begin assembly. We still have to cut the wood. I like to cut it as I go. Some of these barrels, the sizes do differ slightly, so I wouldn't go off my exact measurements. Definitely take your own measurements, usually by an inch or two. And I've also found that the top is sometimes, about an inch wider than the bottom. So those are just some things to keep in mind. So let's get started. First thing we're going to do is measure right in between the two barrels. That's always the first one I make, and then you will screw them together. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is just take your tape measure and figure out the height here of the barrel. This particular barrel is 35 1/4. So we're going to take our 2x4 and cut one 35 1/4 length. Alright, so I got my centerpiece cut at 35 1/4. I'm just going to put it in here and make sure that my measurements are correct, and it seems pretty flush to me. So what we're going to do is cut two more of these. We'll use this as a stop block and cut two more pieces, one for each side of it. Let's do it. Sections cut, I am going to attach the center brace. I'm just going to slide that between the two barrels and try to line the barrels up to where they're flush with the top of the board as much as possible. And if you have some like this here that hangs over, it's fine. We can hit it with the reciprocating saw. Once we're done, that can be a finishing touch. So we're just going to clamp this. Once you're happy with where it is, and the reason I clamp it is because when you shoot the screws through, if your screws are too long and they go through the board, they will push, they have a tendency to push away the plastic instead of going into it. So go ahead and grab your 1 3/4 screws. I got the construction screws with the hex bit because they didn't have regular screws. There's no reason I choose to use these. I actually would just rather have regular screws. So go ahead and Yeah, shoot as many screws as you're happy with, maybe 5 or 6 on each side, as long as each one is securely attached to the center. Once you get the center brace screwed in, the next thing you're going to want to do is measure your piece for the top and bottom. And how I do that is I take one of my other 35¼ inch sections and I put it on the side here, because this can be a little bit tricky because of the way it bows out and the lip here. So you're just going to want to take your section there, take your top board, and run it all the way to the end till it's flush. Now, this is how I do it. I'm sure there's a billion ways to do it. And there is a lot, it is actually pretty forgiving. You can usually make up minor mistakes. Obviously, if it's too long, it's better than it being too short. So. Sometimes I will cut it a little long and then just, trim it as I need it. Because I am not a carpenter, I'm just a regular person with very few carpentry skills. So it can be pretty forgiving. Okay, so now I marked my board here, and I'm going to go ahead and cut it. Okay, once you get your brace screwed on there, we're going to flip it over and do the same thing for the other side. So once you get it flipped over like this, it can be kind of a pain to keep it in place there, so I just use some scrap boards to hold it up. Well, actually, the first thing that I like to do is screw these in place to the top brace, and so we'll go ahead and do that. So once you get your drum attached to the upper brace, what I do is I just grab a section of board here and I sit it on top, and I put the side supports in place, and then I measure it that way because there is a discrepancy between the width of the bottom and the top, and so you just want to compensate for that. There's probably better ways to do this, but this is just the way that I do it, and it works. So. Come over here carefully. Hold this in place. Gently, don't move. Okay, once you get them marked, then just make the cuts. I just did it in the middle because I thought it would be easier. There's going to be a couple feet of excess anyways. Okay, once you make your cuts, just put it up, make sure everything is going to line up, and then shoot your screws. I do two and two. Okay, so I attached that whole side, and now I flipped it over, and now I'm going to attach these sides, and then the whole frame will be completed for this. Then what we have to do is just go in and shoot screws down the side to secure it to the side supports, and then we'll start the legs. Okay, so the last step of building this is just to put the legs on. So far, all the elevated planer boxes that I've made, I've just used the same thing that I constructed the frame with, which in that instance it was 2x6s. Ideally, I think it would be a lot better to use 4x4s to make the legs. I think it would look nicer too. But in order to cut costs, save money and stuff, we're just going to use 2x4s for the legs, and I think it'll work out just fine. So there's a lot of opinions out there about how tall raised garden beds should be, and in my opinion, not that I have a lot of experience with this, but my thought process is that I would just have them so that the plants would be at my arm level, so I wouldn't have to bend over into the garden bed. That's one of the main reasons I wanted to build these, is so everything would be up at arm's reach. And so we've made all of ours, the legs, 3 feet long exactly, and it seems to be about the perfect height. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go cut 4 3-foot sections, and then we're going to attach them, and we will be done with the raised garden thing. Don't forget to add in some drain holes. there you have it. One cheap raised garden bed. So I want to thank you for taking the time to watch the video. If you got any value out of it, hit that like button and please subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date with what we're doing. Again, I'd like to remind you that diligence is the mother of good luck. Thanks for watching.